The phone buzzed exactly at 8:13 p.m. Emily was on her tiny couch in her tiny apartment, folding clothes she'd washed at the laundromat down the street, clothes that smelled faintly of lavender detergent and city dust. The room was dimly lit, just one lamp flickering softly in the corner. Outside the window, distant car horns echoed through the night. She didn't recognize the number at first. Then it hit her. Mom. No picture, no nickname. Just 3 letters on the screen that still had the power to make her stomach twist. Her hand hovered. She hadn't heard her mother's voice in over 3 months, not since she texted her birthday wishes and got a thumbs-up emoji in return. But she picked up. There was no warm greeting, no "Hi, sweetie," just a cold, clipped voice that went straight to the point. Your father's 60th birthday is this Saturday. You should come. Do the right thing. 16 words. Not a single one of them said, "We want to see you." Not, "How are you doing?" Not, "We miss you." Not, "It would mean a lot to your dad." No emotion, no invitation, just expectation. Emily blinked slowly. She held the phone tighter, her knuckles going white. Do the right thing. That phrase stung more than it should have, because in this family, the right thing never really meant what was right. It meant what was convenient, what made them look good. Emily stared at the blank wall across from her. Its pale paint cracked slightly at the corners. Her chest felt tight, not with anger, but with something worse. That old ache of being obligated to people who didn't see her. She could have said no. She wanted to, but old habits die hard. Okay, she whispered. 1 word, 2 syllables, and a lifetime of trying to be good enough all over again. She hung up, sat there in silence, the pile of folded clothes forgotten. And for the first time in months, Emily felt 10 years old again, sitting at the edge of the family dinner table, waiting for someone to ask how her day was. They never did. She stared at the phone long after the call ended. Should she? Emily sat there in silence, her hands resting on her lap, still gripping the edge of the laundry basket like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. The room felt colder now, like the call had drained the warmth out of it. Should she really go back to that apartment? To that table where she was always the extra chair, never the guest of honor? Every part of her screamed no, but a quieter, more stubborn part of her whispered, "What if this time is different?" It was a voice she hated but couldn't silence. That part of her still believed in birthdays, still believed that maybe, just maybe, someone would turn around and finally say, "We're proud of you too, Emily." She felt foolish even thinking it. Because Emily knew this game. She'd played it her whole life. Be the good daughter, show up, stay quiet, don't cause a scene. Pretend that being ignored doesn't hurt. But somewhere deep down, like an ember refusing to die, she still hoped. Hope, it turns out, was the cruelest habit of all. The hardest part wasn't the phone call. It was the memories the call woke up. Emily stood up from the couch and wandered into the kitchen, not because she was hungry, but because sitting still made the ache worse. Her fingers traced the chipped edge of the countertop, the worn handle of the cabinet. Everything in her apartment was old, but it was hers. And yet, the voice of her mother still echoed, "Do the right thing." But who had ever done the right thing for her? Her birthday always came and went like an ordinary Tuesday. No cake, no candles, no song. Just maybe, if she was lucky, a distracted, happy birthday over breakfast. She remembered being 7. She had drawn a picture for her mom, a tree, a sun, a family. She had written all their names underneath in shaky crayon letters. Mom, Dad, Lily, and me. She held it out proudly, her chest puffed up, eyes shining. Her mom glanced down and said, "That's nice, sweetie," before walking away to fix Lily's hair for ballet class. No hug, no pin on the fridge, nothing. At 11, she baked her own birthday cupcake in the microwave while her parents took Lily to a movie premiere. She lit a single match, made a wish, and blew it out alone. At 14, she won first place in a science fair. Her teacher said her project could be national level. She rushed home, heart pounding. Her dad said, "Don't get too distracted. Lily's got auditions this week." The message was always the same. Lily is important. You are not. And somewhere along the way, Emily stopped trying. Not because she gave up, but because it hurt less than being invisible again. 3 days before the party, Emily stood in front of her narrow closet, staring at the same 5 dresses she'd owned for years. Nothing glittered, nothing shimmered, just quiet fabric in quiet colors. Dresses that said, "Don't look at me too long." She ran her fingers across a navy blue one simple clean lines, a soft cotton blend, the one she wore to her college presentation, the one she wore to her last job interview. It wasn't festive, but it felt safe. She held it up to the mirror. Her reflection looked fine. Not stunning, not dramatic, just present. And maybe that was enough. Next, she pulled out a small box from under her bed, her savings jar. Inside were wrinkled bills and clinking coins, tips from the cafe, change from skipped dinners, the kind of savings only a quiet fighter makes. She counted the cash carefully. Enough for one thing. She went to a small shop downtown where the owner knew her by name. There, she bought a leather briefcase, sleek, classic, not too expensive, but it had that timeless feel, something a successful man might carry. "For my dad," she said, rapping at herself. "He likes practical things." And yet, when she placed the gift bag on the kitchen counter later that night, her heart pounded like it was holding diamonds. She wasn't just bringing a gift, she was bringing herself. A version of herself that had always been overlooked, yet still showed up dressed with dignity, holding a peace offering in one hand and quiet hope in the other. As she laid the dress on the bed and slipped the briefcase gift into its bag, one thought crossed her mind. Not everyone wears a dress to a battlefield, but that night, I did. The elevator opened with a soft chime. Emily stepped out onto polished marble floors that gleamed like glass. The apartment smelled like money, lavender candles, roasted lamb, and something she couldn't name but had come to associate with people who never worried about rent. The ceilings were high, the windows stretched floor to ceiling, revealing the city skyline, glittering like a jewelry box. Every inch of the penthouse whispered perfection. And in the center of it all was Lily. Wearing a deep emerald green gown, she looked like she'd been painted by a fashion magazine editor. Her makeup flawless, her smile rehearsed, her posture perfect. As Emily walked in, no one looked up. Not at first. Their eyes were fixed on Lily, her laugh, her gestures, her stories of acting auditions and fan messages. She floated from group to group like a celebrity. Even the chandelier seemed to shine brighter above her. Emily stood near the door for a few seconds, gripping her gift bag tightly, unsure if she should move or disappear. Her feet felt heavy. Her presence felt wrong. This wasn't a party. It was a stage. And Lily, she was the only star cast. Emily walked further into the room, her heels barely making a sound over the marble. She passed a group of laughing guests, none of whom glanced in her direction. A waiter brushed by with a tray of champagne flutes. He offered a glass to everyone, except her. She reached the long dining table. 100 lights sparkled above it. Silverware glistened. Chairs were filled with well-dressed people, talking, smiling, laughing. But no one turned to say, "Oh, Emily, you made it." No hand waved her over. No face lit up. She spotted her father across the room. He was in conversation, laughing, too loud, sipping wine, gesturing with flair. She waited for his eyes to meet hers. When they finally did, he gave a curt nod. Not a smile, not a word, just a nod, like a stranger acknowledging someone who accidentally made eye contact. "You made it," he said flatly. "Find a seat." Then he turned back to his story about Lily's latest theater audition. Emily stood frozen, clutching her gift bag. No hug, no "how are you?" no "we've missed you." She was there physically, but emotionally, she was as invisible as the shadow beneath the chandelier. The dinner had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Laughter, wine, polished small talk. Emily sat near the end of the table, barely touching her food. The lamb was tender, the risotto rich, but it all tasted like dust in her mouth. She kept glancing down at the gift bag by her feet, the briefcase she'd spent weeks saving for, still unopened, still untouched. Then her father stood. A soft clink-clink of his glass echoed through the room. Voices quieted. All eyes turned to him like lights dimming for a performance. "Family friends," he began with the smooth charm of a man used to holding court, "tonight is not just my 60th birthday. It's a celebration of everything this family has built and where we're going next." Emily sat straighter, a flicker of nervous hope sparking in her chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe she would be seen. He raised his glass toward Lily, who smiled like she already knew what was coming. "Susan and I have made a decision," he said. "We've decided to give our entire savings, $500,000, to Lily." Silence. Sharp. Instant. Deafening. A few guests gasped softly. Others stared at their plates. One aunt sipped her wine too fast. Emily didn't move. Her heart was thudding so loudly she thought others might hear it. Her breath caught. Her father smiled proudly at Lily. Her mother beamed. Lily looked radiant. No one looked at Emily, not even once. Just as the silence began to settle, her mother stood and smiled sweetly at the guests, her hand resting gently on Lily's shoulder. "Lily is talented, driven, and full of light," she said, glowing with pride. "This money will help her shine even brighter on the world stage where she belongs." There was a polite murmur of approval, a few nods, someone clapped. Emily sat perfectly still. She didn't expect applause for herself, but she didn't expect what came next either. Her mother turned her head, finally acknowledging Emily. Their eyes met for a split second. "And you, Emily," her mother said with a voice too warm to be sincere. "You've always been so strong, so independent. You'll figure it out. You always do." It landed like a bullet. Soft words, sharp blade. The room fell quiet again. No one spoke, no one moved. The sentence echoed louder than any scream. "You'll figure it out." Like it was a badge of honor, like survival was enough, like being neglected was something to be proud of. Emily smiled tightly, blinking fast. She wanted to speak, to scream, but all she could do was sit very still and try not to shatter in front of them. Silence, but not the kind that soothes. This was the kind that crackled. Forks paused, eyes lowered, glasses half raised. No one said a word. No one looked at Emily. No one stood up. No one even shifted in their chair to lean her way. She sat frozen, gift bag still resting by her feet, hands folded in her lap, jaw clenched so tight it ached. Inside, her chest felt hollow, like her ribs were echoing. This wasn't just about money. It never had been. It was about being dismissed, again, in front of everyone. A public ceremony of exclusion masked as a family toast. Emily scanned the table. Some guests avoided eye contact. One aunt looked down, embarrassed. A cousin tried to smile, then looked away. No one said, "Wait, what about Emily?" No one said, "That's not fair." They were all part of the silence, and that silence was deafening. She wanted to vanish, but even more, she wanted to scream, "Does anyone see me?" But her voice stayed locked behind her teeth, so she sat there, still, quiet, swallowing a scream that would have shattered glass. One tear, that's all it took. It slid down Emily's cheek quietly, like it had been waiting years to escape. It landed on the edge of the white tablecloth, a single darkened circle on a sea of ivory linen and silverware. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and chose to pretend they didn't. She didn't wipe it away. What was the point? You can only hide your pain for so long before it demands to be seen. Her hands were still, her breath shallow, her mind screaming into a void. In that moment, Emily realized something brutal. She wasn't heartbroken. She was done hoping. She didn't belong here. Not in this house, not at this table. Not in a family where love was currency and she had none. Then, a sound, sharp, unmistakable. The scrape of a chair. It echoed across the glossy floor like thunder in a cathedral. Someone was standing. Emily's body tensed. Her mind raced. Was it Lily? Her father? Was someone finally going to speak up? She turned her head slowly, breath caught in her throat. And then, a chair slid back. Someone stood up. But it wasn't me. The chair that scraped belonged to someone most of them had forgotten was even there. Grandpa James, 82 years old, thin frame, gray suit, sitting quietly at the far end of the room like a ghost of older days. He hadn't said a word all evening. He'd watched everything, every compliment thrown at Lily, every silence handed to Emily. He watched like a man who'd seen too much and stayed silent for too long. And now he was standing, not fast, not dramatic, but deliberate. He placed both hands on the table to steady himself. The room didn't just go quiet, it shifted. The guests froze mid-breath. Even Lily blinked. Even Robert Emily's father leaned back in his chair, unsure what was happening. Grandpa James adjusted his posture, reached slowly for his polished cane. His voice, when it came, was low and unshaking. "I believe it's my turn to speak now." Grandpa James reached slowly into the inside pocket of his jacket. The room watched in silence. His fingers pulled out a worn, cream-colored envelope, edges slightly frayed, corners soft from being carried too long. It didn't look like much, but it felt heavy. Heavy with intention, with words unsaid, with truths long buried. He held it in both hands, then placed it flat on the center of the table, directly in front of Robert Emily's father. Gasps rippled through the room like a breeze through tall grass. Robert stared at it confused. Lily frowned, clearly unnerved. Emily just held her breath. Grandpa James straightened his back, his voice calm but edged with quiet power. "This," he said, resting one hand on the envelope, "is my will." The words dropped like stones into water. Suddenly, the silence wasn't polite anymore. It was tense, charged, waiting to explode. Grandpa James looked around the room. Not rushed, not flustered. He wanted them all to hear every word. His gaze landed on Emily, who sat frozen, as if afraid to believe this was real. Then he turned back to the envelope, tapped it gently, and said, calmly, clearly, and without hesitation, "My home, my land, my entire savings. I'm leaving it all to Emily." The words dropped like a hammer. Lily jolted. Susan's wineglass clinked against her plate. Robert's face paled. Gasps rippled through the room, followed by a stunned, disbelieving silence. But James wasn't finished. He looked at Emily again, this time with something unmistakable in his eyes: pride. Because she earned it. Not with performances, not with followers or fancy degrees, but with heart, with loyalty, and with love when no one else showed any. The words had barely finished leaving Grandpa James's mouth when Lily exploded. "What? Grandpa, no! You can't do this!" she screamed, pushing her chair back so hard it screeched. All heads turned to her. The golden girl was no longer glowing. She was shaking, wild-eyed, lips trembling. "This isn't fair!" Dad said that money was going to help me get to LA. He promised. Her voice cracked. Not theatrical, not charming, just raw, panicked, ugly. Susan gasped. Robert looked like someone had just punched him in the chest. His fingers twitched at the edge of the envelope. Around the table, guests froze, mid-bite, mid-blink, mid-sip. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. The room wasn't just surprised. It was shocked into silence. All the attention that had once clung to Lily was now staring straight at Emily. And Emily, she didn't flinch. Grandpa James didn't yell. He didn't need to. His voice was steady, but every word felt like it was carved out of stone. He looked at Lily first, then at Robert, then finally at Susan. And when he spoke, it wasn't just to defend Emily. It was to unmask the lie everyone had been pretending was truth. "You didn't raise a daughter," he said quietly. "You raised a mirror. One that reflected your pride, your ambition, your need to show off. You didn't raise her to love. You raised her to perform." No one breathed. Lily's face crumpled. Robert's lips parted, but no words came. Susan clutched her wineglass so tightly it looked like it might shatter. James continued, his voice cold but heartbreakingly calm. "And when Emily didn't shine like Lily, you didn't ask why. You just looked away. You called her strong, so you didn't have to care. You called her independent, so you could neglect her." He turned back to Emily. "And this time," his voice softened, "she was never invisible. You just refused to see her." Emily didn't speak, couldn't. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, gripping the fabric of her dress, the one she bought on discount, ironed the night before, hoping someone might notice. She had come expecting nothing, and yet, here she was. The room was still frozen, all eyes watching. But Grandpa James, he wasn't watching the room. He was watching her. And in his eyes, she didn't see duty. She didn't see pity. She saw love. Quiet, steady, unshakable. And suddenly, her lungs remembered how to breathe. Her chest lifted slightly. Her shoulders eased. Not because she was proud, not yet, but because, for once, she didn't feel invisible. For once, someone had chosen her. Not in secret, not behind closed doors, but in front of everyone. No applause. No goodbyes. Just silence. The kind of silence that sticks to your skin, that whistles behind your ears like wind through broken windows. Emily stood slowly. She didn't look at anyone. Not at her mother, whose eyes were still fixed on the floor. Not at Lily, whose mascara now painted streaks down her cheek. Not even at her father, whose mouth opened slightly but offered nothing. She just turned and walked toward the door. Beside her, Grandpa James moved with calm certainty. No cane, no hesitation, just presence. Together, they walked across the polished floor, past the velvet chairs, the untouched desserts, and the people who once refused to see her. The door clicked shut behind them, and the silence they left behind was louder than anything they could have said. It was a small house, just 2 bedrooms, paint peeling slightly on the shutters. The porch creaked when you stepped on it, but it smelled like stories. There was a sunflower mug by the window that had seen more sunrises than most people, a shelf filled with old detective novels and Polaroids of fishing trips, and on the fridge, a drawing Emily made when she was 6, still there, still crooked, still kept. She looked around quiet. Grandpa James placed her bag gently by the couch and said, "It's not Paris, but it's yours, as long as you need." Emily nodded. Her throat was too tight to speak. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't just visiting someone else's world. She was home. Dinner was simple. Tomato soup, warm bread, a bit of cheese. But it tasted like peace. They sat by the small kitchen table, the one with a wobbly leg Grandpa always fixed with a folded napkin. And in the background, an old record played, soft jazz, crackly but comforting. Ella Fitzgerald's voice drifted through the room like a lullaby for two tired hearts. "You remember when you drew that cow with 3 heads?" Grandpa chuckled. "Your mom almost fainted, said it was disturbing." Emily laughed, really laughed. She didn't know why. Maybe because it was silly. Maybe because it had been too long. They talked, they remembered, they let the silence sit with them, not heavy, but warm. And when the night grew still, Emily realized this was the first time in years she didn't feel like she was trying too hard to be okay. She just was. It started with a pencil. Not a canvas, not a big plan, just a cheap sketch pad from the corner store and a half-used pencil she found in one of Grandpa's drawers. She sat by the window, sunlight brushing her cheeks like warm breath. At first, her hand hesitated. The pencil hovered as if waiting for permission. But then, the first line came. It was shaky, uneven, uncertain, but it was hers. She drew the sunflower mug, then the porch swing. Then the quiet curve of Grandpa's shoulder as he napped. Hours passed, but for the first time in a long time, time didn't feel like the enemy. She wasn't drawing to escape. She wasn't drawing to impress. She was drawing to exist. One night, over hot cocoa and the sound of rain tapping the roof, Emily whispered a truth she hadn't dared to say aloud, not even to herself. "I want to open an art studio," she said, "but not just for me, for kids like me, the quiet ones. The overlooked ones, the ones no one claps for." Grandpa looked up from his crossword. "You mean the ones who color outside the lines?" Emily smiled. "Exactly. The ones who were told their colors didn't matter." She told him about her dream. A small studio with wide tables, messy paint jars, soft music, and no pressure to be perfect. Just a place where a child could exist loudly, feel seen, and maybe, just maybe, believe they mattered. She wasn't just painting now. She was building something she never had, a space where silence wasn't punishment. It was a canvas. It didn't happen in one moment. There was no grand speech, no dramatic music, just small things, shared breakfasts, jokes over burnt toast, silent company during her late-night sketching. Emily didn't even realize it at first. But one evening, while washing dishes, Grandpa handed her a clean plate and said, "Feels like you've always belonged here." She froze. Not because of the words, but because she believed them. No test, no conditions, no role to perform. Just her. No longer the daughter who was too quiet, the sister who wasn't enough. Just Emily. And for the first time, that name felt like enough. The call came on a Monday. Emily was organizing paint jars when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't pick up, but something told her to answer. "Miss Carter?" "Yes, this is Martin Quinn. I'm a lawyer representing your grandfather's estate." "Okay, I need to inform you your family is suing. They're contesting the will." Emily felt her chest tighten. "On what grounds?" A pause. Then came the blow. "They're claiming your grandfather was mentally unfit when he changed his will, that you manipulated him." She almost laughed. Almost. But instead, she whispered, "He was the only one who ever saw me." Emily didn't cry. Not this time. She sat down. The brush in her hand still stained with cobalt blue. The words echoed in her head, "They're saying he wasn't of sound mind." She thought of Grandpa's laugh, his steady hands fixing the squeaky door, the way he remembered jazz lyrics from 50 years ago. Not of sound mind. He was the clearest voice in her entire life. Emily felt her heart twist, not in fear, but in something else. Resolve. They could try to take the money. They could lie about her. But they were not going to erase him. She stood up. "Fine," she said. "Let's fight." The lawyer's office smelled like old books and fresh coffee. Emily sat with her hands in her lap, eyes still raw from sleepless nights. Then Mr. Quinn, her lawyer, opened a black folder. "Your grandfather, he was a very meticulous man." He placed a flash drive on the table, labeled in neat handwriting, "For Emily only if they fight." He plugged it in. The screen lit up. There was Grandpa sitting in his armchair wearing his Sunday vest. He looked straight into the camera. "If you're watching this, they tried to undo my will, didn't they?" Emily gasped. "Let me be clear," the video continued. "I know exactly what I'm doing. My mind is sharp. I've been evaluated by Dr. Hart, records included. Emily is my choice, and I'm proud of her." Mr. Quinn handed her a document. "We have the doctor's written statement. 2 neighbors witnessed the video. And your grandfather filed a notarized affidavit." Emily sat back stunned. She'd expected to fight with nothing but love, but it turns out he'd left her an arsenal of truth. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and cold tension. Emily sat in the front row, straight-backed, silent, while her parents whispered furiously to their lawyer. Lily wore all black, like she was mourning a version of herself that no longer got everything. The judge entered, and the battle began. Her father's voice was loud, too loud. "My father-in-law was senile. He was manipulated." The opposing lawyer nodded dramatically, waved documents, talked about emotional coercion. Then came Emily's turn. Her lawyer stood, calm, precise, played the video. Grandpa's voice filled the room, not weak, not confused, but clear, direct, deliberate. "Emily is not only my granddaughter, she's the one who stayed, the one who listened, the one who gave when she had nothing to gain." The room shifted. Even the judge leaned forward. Emily didn't say a word. She didn't need to. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about honor. After the verdict, they tried. A text from her mother, "Can we talk? We didn't mean to hurt you." A call from her father, sent to voicemail. Even Lily in a shaky voicemail, "I was just doing what they told me. I didn't know." Emily listened, then deleted it. She stood by the window, light pouring over her sketchbook, and whispered to herself, "I don't hate them." But she didn't want a reunion. Not coffee, not lunch, not staged tears with cameras off. She didn't need an apology that came only after a courtroom loss. She needed peace, and she had it. Some doors, she thought, aren't slammed shut. They're simply not opened again. Emily didn't celebrate. No champagne, no victory dinner. She went home, took off her shoes, and watered the plants Grandpa left behind. She stood by the window, looking at the same moon she used to cry under. Only Menno, she wasn't crying. She was still. There were no parades, no applause. Just a quiet kind of power, the kind you earn when you stop begging to be chosen. She realized something that night. They never had anything of mine. Not my worth, not my truth, not even my heart. And that was her freedom. I used to think they could take everything from me, but now I know they never had anything that truly belonged to me. It started with an empty room, one window, one cracked easel, and a sign she painted by hand, "Light after the fog." There was no grand opening, no press, no ribbon cutting, just one child, a girl with her sleeves pulled down to hide her arms asking softly, "Can I draw here, even if I'm not good?" Emily smiled. "Especially if you're not good." That first week, only 3 people came, then 7. Then a line formed every Sunday morning. People didn't just come to paint, they came to remember who they were before the world told them otherwise. Kids who never got picked in school, mothers who forgot they once loved color, even tired men who sat in silence, then cried when they saw what they made. Emily didn't teach art. She gave permission to feel, to fail, to heal. Before she hung any student drawings, before she painted the walls soft gray blue, before the piano arrived, Emily hung one thing first, a portrait. Old canvas, charcoal strokes, delicate and firm, lines that whispered age, laughter, and quiet strength. It was him, Grandpa James, not posing, just sitting by the window, eyes looking somewhere far, as if still seeing something the rest had missed. Beneath it, in small cursive, "The first person who ever saw me." She didn't add a price. didn't add her name, didn't need to. The room felt full finally. And when the kids asked, "Who is he?" Emily would smile, touch the corner of the frame, and say, "He's the reason this place exists." It started small. A mom left a thank you note. "My son hasn't smiled in weeks. Today he ran to show me his drawing." A local librarian dropped off books about art therapy. A retired carpenter volunteered to build new easels. Soon, word spread. Emily didn't chase it, but stories of her kindness rippled through the town like sunlight on quiet water. They called her the Quiet Flame. She never raised her voice. She never lectured, but people listened because she saw them in the same way she once wished to be seen. One day, a local paper featured her From Overlooked to Overwhelming, the Artist Who Heals. She clipped the article, not to frame it, just to fold it gently into her journal next to a sketch of her grandpa's hands. The gallery buzzed. Kids were laughing. A jazz trio played in the corner. Paintings hung like memories, bold, raw, unapologetic. Emily was helping a boy pin up his first ever drawing when she felt a stillness near the entrance. She turned, and there she was, Lily, hair shorter now, eyes quieter, standing just outside the glass doors, not stepping in. No cameras, no parents, just her. Their eyes met. Emily didn't wave, didn't call out. She just smiled. A quiet, honest smile. Not bitter, not victorious, just whole. Lily blinked, looked down, and slowly walked away. Emily turned back to the boy. "You ready to show the world?" she asked. He nodded, and they pinned it up together. Emily sat alone in the studio. The children had gone, the jazz had faded. It was just her now, in the quiet hum of healing. She stared at the door Lily had stood behind. No resentment, no ache, just breath. People think forgiveness is forgetting. It isn't. It's remembering without the weight. It's saying, "Yes, you hurt me, but you don't get to own that hurt anymore." Emily picked up her sketchbook, drew a small heart in the corner of a blank page. No names, no titles, just space. For herself. "I don't need them to love me anymore," she whispered. "I've learned to love myself." And this time, the tears that came were warm. It was a Tuesday morning. Light poured in through the wide windows, dancing on the hardwood floor. Emily stood at the front of the room, chalk-stained hands, sleeves rolled up, smiling. Before her, a dozen children laughed, paint smudged on cheeks, colors blooming on paper. No one was too loud. No one was too much. No one was less than. They were all seen. Every sketch, every wobble of a brush celebrated. Emily walked between the easels, nodding, crouching, guiding. And for a moment, she looked up and realized this was the room she once needed, and now she was the one creating it. She was washing brushes when a tiny voice piped up behind her. "Miss Emily, what is family?" Emily froze, not from fear, not from sadness, but from the weight of it. She turned around. A little girl, maybe 7, stood there holding a painting of 3 stick figures holding hands. No faces, no labels, just hands. Emily knelt down eye level with the girl. She didn't rush her answer. She looked at the painting and saw herself, once the invisible one, now holding the hands of those who never let go. And finally, she said, "Family is someone who sees you when the rest of the world doesn't. It's not about names. It's about who stays and who believes you matter." The girl nodded, smiling like she understood. Maybe not all of it, but the part that mattered. She let the silence linger. Then she looked at the little girl at the brushstrokes on her cheeks, at the hope hiding in that tiny question. And softly, with no tremble in her voice, Emily answered, "Family is the one who sees you when the rest of the world turns away." No textbook, no dictionary, just truth. The kind you earn when you've lived both the silence and the seeing. The class was over, the brushes were cleaned, the laughter lingered in the walls like sunlight in a bottle. Emily turned off the lights one by one. She stood at the entrance of her studio, light after the fog. For a moment, she looked back. Paintings of children, a portrait of her grandfather, and in the center, a quote written in her own handwriting. You don't need to be loved by everyone, just seen by someone who truly does. Emily smiled, not the smile of someone who was trying, the smile of someone who had arrived. She locked the door, stepped onto the sidewalk, bathed in late afternoon sun, and disappeared into the golden hour. Her fear left behind her heart, wide open. Not everyone who shares your blood is your family. Some will live their whole lives around you without ever truly seeing you. And sometimes, someone who wasn't there in the beginning can still be the one who chooses you in the end. Your worth is not defined by those who ignore you. You don't need love from everyone. Just one person who truly sees you, and sometimes that person is you. If you've ever felt like Emily, overlooked, unchosen, or praised only for your strength to survive, you're not alone. At Whispers of Life, we tell stories like Emily's, stories that might be yours or someone you silently root for. Hit that subscribe button now, so every week you'll have one more reminder: you deserve to be seen.